If you could dive right into the mysterious darkness of the ocean depths, who knows what you'd come upon? Legends that are hundreds of years old mention some giant sea monsters hiding deep down below the ocean waves, like the Kraken, the Loch Ness Monster, the Hydra, Leviathan, and so many more. Okay, no one has ever seen such monsters, but there are still weird and unusually big sea spiders, squid, worms, and many other animals that grew way more than we'd expected. Take a look at the colossal squid from sub-Antarctic waters. It's around 14 times longer than the arrow squid that lives near New Zealand. And deep down in the Pacific Ocean, there's a sea sponge as big as a minivan. Oceans contain about 96.5% of all water on our planet. Up to 80% of all life on Earth we've discovered is under the oceanic waves. We haven't explored, mapped, or even seen more than 80% of the ocean. In fact, we've mapped Mars better than we have the ocean bottom. The pressure down there is insane, and it would make you feel like you're holding up almost 50 jumbo jets. And temperatures at such depths are extremely low. Conditions deep below the oceanic surface are harsh, so creatures that live there need to adjust. That's why many of them grew very, very big to survive. Creatures that live in cold, dark depths are so big because of a phenomenon called deep sea gigantism. The deeper you go below the oceanic surface, the less sunlight there is. That's why the temperatures drastically fall. The result of this is increased cell size and longer life of creatures. Also, these creatures don't have as much oxygen as the marine animals that live in shallower parts, and their food sources are minimal. Much of the food they get comes from shallower waters, and only a little bit trickles down to the deeper parts. And when there's not enough food, being large is an advantage. Larger creatures can move farther and faster to find something to eat. Their metabolism works slower. They don't digest the food that fast, so they can store food and conserve energy for hard times when they can't find anything to eat. They don't need to regulate their body temperature either, which also helps them save some energy, which they can then transfer to other body processes. They mature more slowly and later than those living in shallow waters. The majority of fish species that dwell in deep waters live 30 years or even more. Orange ruffy fish, on the other hand, live up to 150 years. This fella grows 24 feet in length and weighs up to 1.5 tons. But it grows to be so big for centuries. They start looking for partners when they're 150 years old, and they can also live this long because there are not so many predators at such depths. Also, there are no humans or other things that can disturb them or endanger their existence. At such depths, the environment is pretty stable, so many animals there are like living fossils because they probably haven't changed in millions of years. The first 650 feet of the ocean's depth are considered to be the open ocean. The majority of the marine life we've discovered lives there, since that's the area the sun can still reach. And then, as you continue going deeper, you reach the twilight zone. It seems like nothing lives there. But at about 820 feet, you see a small oasis of ancient life blooming. For example, there are sea lilies, animals that have been living at such depths unchanged for millions of years. Coelacanths, another living fossil, have been living in the ocean for more than 360 million years. Hagfish haven't changed in a very long time either, for over 300 million years. This creature lives at depths of 5,500 feet. They evolved before the rest of the vertebrates, which is why this is the only living animal without jaws or a spine, even though it still has a skull. Deep-sea creatures can't survive in shallow waters. They've evolved to live in depths under bigger hydrostatic pressure. Humans and other organisms that have internal spaces filled with gas would end up crushed if we could go to such depths. That's why deep-sea divers always need to wear special dive suits designed for surroundings with higher pressure, even though they're not going that deep to the areas where these giants live. But near Antarctica, you can see gigantism way closer to the surface, like giant sponges, sea slugs, sea spiders the size of a dinner plate, worms, and even some enormous single-celled organisms. They all tend to chill in shallower waters. Scientists are not sure why exactly, but they think it could have something to do with oxygen. Giant species use just a little oxygen, and the waters around Antarctica are pretty rich in it, which means there's hardly any limit to these animals growing bigger and bigger. Back to deep-sea creatures. As mentioned, they had to adjust to strong pressure, so they almost don't have any air gaps in their body at all. They're mostly water-based, and since water is incompressible, which means it's not something you can compress, it helps them stay unaffected at such high pressure. But because of all that, if they were to go up towards the surface, they'd probably swell up, maybe even explode. Just look at the blobfish, the one that takes the title of the ugliest animal in the world. It looks normal deep down below the surface, where its natural habitat is. But when it gets up to the surface, where the pressure is 120 times lower, it changes its shape. The blobfish doesn't have a skeleton or muscles, so without high deep-sea pressure, it ends up being all floppy and saggy. The dark oceanic depths are not just scary to watch, but to listen to as well. In 1997, scientists were trying to find underwater volcanoes located off the South American coast. During their travels, they recorded one of the loudest noises ever registered. It was pretty weird, too. It was so loud, even sensors from more than 3,000 miles away managed to pick it up. They later called it the bloop. It took them 15 years to conclude the sound came from an ice quake. That's when seismic activity breaks frozen ground. Water at the bottom of the ocean is not always extremely cold. There are hydrothermal vents on the seafloor, and the water that comes out of them can be up to 750 degrees Fahrenheit. Powerful pressure, yep, the same one that would crush you, is something that doesn't allow the water to boil. There are hundreds of animal species that live near deep-sea hydrothermal vents. Some of them, such as tube worms, are not like anything we have seen before. These worms absorb chemicals from vent fluids. That's how they feed bacteria that live in them. And in return, those bacteria give them the carbon the tube worms need to survive. 2/3 of all of the coral species scientists discovered live in dark, deep, and extremely cold parts of the ocean. Some even live in parts that are 3 miles deep. They can survive at low temperatures, such as 28 degrees Fahrenheit. Some of these cold water corals are more than 8,000 years old. They form amazing structures that can rise up to 115 feet tall. The deep is not just a mysterious world of unusual creatures. The landscape under the oceanic surface is magnificent too. The canyons hiding there make even the Grand Canyon seem small. For instance, check out the one located in the Bering Sea, the Jemchug Canyon. Its vertical relief is more than 8,500 feet deep. That's huge. The largest ocean waves are not the ones you can see from the shoreline. They occur under the surface, and they're called internal waves. They take place between two water masses that have different densities. They travel at speeds of thousands of miles per hour and can be 650 feet tall.
In 1969, two brothers went fishing on the Altamaha River in the Clark's Bluff area. They cast their fishing rods, ready to wait for some fish to bite their bait. But at that moment, they saw something strange. At first, they thought it was a sturgeon. But then, they saw that the length of this sturgeon was about 13 feet, almost as tall as 2 basketball players. Of course, such a size didn't frighten the brothers because some species of sturgeon can reach a length of 24 feet, which is about 3.5 basketball players. Something else surprised them. The face of this creature resembled that of an alligator. The tail was horizontal. It had a triangular crest along its upper body and sharp metal-colored teeth protruding from its mouth. A creature that looked like a dinosaur was quite an unusual phenomenon for the time when Steven Spielberg was an aspiring young director and didn't even think about creating Jurassic Park. So, On that day in 1969, two brothers saw something elusive, like Bigfoot or the Loch Ness Monster. They saw a creature that had been the subject of stories for centuries, a creature that is being searched for even today. They met Altamaha. This is a famous and narrow circles monster that lives near the mouth of the Altamaha River in southeastern Georgia. People from the Lower Muskogee Creek tribe talked about it long before the British colonization. In ancient times, there were legends about a snake-like lizard that bellowed and hissed. So this monster has already been elusive for several centuries. But do you know what distinguishes Altamaha from Nessie, Chupacabra, and others? Yes, there are no bad quality photos or videos of Altamaha, but there's a huge amount of evidence from different periods. For the locals, Altamaha is so real that one artist created a detailed statue of this river beast. Of course, it's not accurate because it's based on eyewitness accounts. But you'll probably agree that it would be scary to see such a cute animal in the middle of the river while fishing. Almost all the stories are about a creature without hind limbs, but with front flippers, which swims like a dolphin, has a crocodile face, big eyes, and large, sharp teeth. It's gray or green with a whitish-yellow belly and a bony crest on its crown. And most interestingly, people have seen this creature in different sizes. Of course, when you see an unknown dinosaur-like thing, you can exaggerate its size or estimate it incorrectly, which explains the difference in statements. But there's also a probability that Georgia is home to a big family of Altamaha. One of the first people to see this creature and report it to a local newspaper was Captain Delano. On his schooner Eagle, he was sailing near St. Simon's Island, below the mouth of the Altamaha River, when he saw a creature about 70 feet long, which is almost twice the size of a school bus. Its body was like a barrel, and its head was like that of an alligator. It's possible that the captain greatly exaggerated the size of the monster because of the excitement, but several other people who were with him in the boat confirmed his words. From that moment on, reports of the river monster began to appear more often. Someone saw it flashing along the river. Others saw how it behaved defensively towards people. And some people reported that Altamaha was just basking in the sun. Just imagine its displeasure. Not only fishers met Altamaha. In the 20s of the last century, lumberjacks were crossing the river and saw a huge snake-like monster. In 1935, a group of hunters saw a creature they called a giant snake. In the 1940s, Boy Scouts encountered a similar creature. And in the 1950s, two employees from Reedsville State Prison saw it. For so many years, people have been meeting it, and no one has ever managed to catch the monster. Perhaps it's smarter than it looks and always very careful. Maybe people are afraid to touch it. Perhaps they consider it a national treasure and protect it. But one day, there was a case when Altamaha almost fell into a trap. In the summer of 1980, two men saw a monster wallowing on a muddy shore. It seemed like it was stuck and trying to get out. The witnesses said that the rough, dark-skinned creature had finally left the shore, dived into the water, and disappeared. Later that year, another man said he had seen something similar. A snake-like large creature with two brown humps protruding from the water. It dived into the water and churned the surface, like a boat while moving. Other witnesses catching crabs described Altamaha as the largest eel in the world. Okay, stop! Many saw it in the last century, but what about more recent news? Is the monster still alive? Oh yeah. In 2002, a man was pulling a boat upriver near the town of Brunswick when he noticed something large, 20 feet long and about 6.5 feet wide, breaking out of the water. In 2010, a photographer caught something strange on camera floating along a canal in the city of Darien. And these cases are just the ones we know about. Surely, many people have seen this thing but haven't talked about it in newspapers or on the internet. If you don't believe these stories, you can go to Darien, get on a boat, and ride along the river to see this monster with your own eyes. Yes, according to reports, this creature always tries to avoid people. It's very cautious, but all the same, you should not get too close to this water lizard twice the size of a school bus. go to the Museum of Darien to take a photo of the Altamaha statue. There are also souvenirs with the image of this monster. But let's assume that you or someone else managed not only to take a clear photo of the Altamaha, but also catch it. What is the next course of action? What are you going to tell the world, and how will the world react to it? What will happen to the poor animal, surrounded by millions of flashes from reporters' cameras? Will people make a show out of it or send it to a lab? Fortunately, in 2001, scientists already developed an action plan. This plan was drawn up by Scotland's nature agency, NatureScot, since they had concerns about the Loch Ness Monster. At some point, it became too popular and too many people tried to catch it, so the agency became concerned about saving the life of the famous creature. They showed the Nessie contingency plan that can also be used for any unknown animal that lives in water or on land. According to the plan, if the ancient lizard is captured, scientists should take its DNA sample and just release it back into the wild. Fair enough. The animal will receive the same legal protection as other local wildlife in Scotland. All attempts to catch it will be prohibited. But let's imagine that this is exactly what happens. Scientists receive a DNA sample of the Altamaha, the Loch Ness Monster, or other similar creatures. What could those be? Some ancient descendants of dinosaurs? For example, the plesiosaur looks like a distant relative of these monsters. It's huge and has a long neck and a toothy mouth. What if it managed to survive and reach the Altamaha River? Or it may be a completely new, unknown species that lives in deep freshwater. Some people who saw Altamaha said that it had produced a hissing sound. What if it's some kind of ancient python or anaconda that moved from land to water and grew fins? In any case, it should not be ruled out that it may be some kind of eel or sturgeon. One day, someone saw it, was impressed, and told other people about it with great exaggeration. Everyone believed it and started spreading the story. What do you think?
There's a creature somewhere deep in the ocean looking for prey that would make Dracula himself proud. It's been around since before even the dinosaurs walked the earth. It has no bones or jaw, but it doesn't stop this underwater vampire from hunting. The name of this eel-like parasite is the Pacific lamprey. The English monarch loved this fish so much that he defied doctors' orders to stop eating lamprey flesh. He got sick every time he'd have the original gooey fish. But the lack of bones and the fact that this lamprey tastes like slow-cooked beefsteak made the royal fall in love with the fish once and for all. The product of this love was a chill in his aged body, some heavy sweating, and some other scary symptoms, which eventually took his life and interrupted his 35-year reign. The lamprey is way better at surviving, as it lived through at least 4 mass extinctions. Its ancient ancestors evolved over 450 million years ago. There are around 40 living species of lampreys still thriving across the world. The Pacific lamprey is just one of them. These creatures have cartilage instead of bones, and a third eye, which is a special light-sensing organ on the top of their heads. Instead of a regular jaw, they have a sucker mouth surrounded by teeth. It's perfect for latching onto prey and sipping up body fluids like underwater vampires. Once they pick a victim, they suction it, making a seal that's almost impossible to break. Scientists believe the Pacific lampreys don't munch on flesh. Female lampreys lay up to 200,000 eggs in nests that stay in fresh water for 3 to 4 weeks. Once the larvae hatch, they burrow into sediment and stay under the sand for up to a decade. When they hit their teenage years, these miniature Draculas re-emerge and migrate from freshwater all the way to the Pacific Ocean. This journey isn't the easiest, and it takes some changes to its appearance and physiology to adapt to a huge change in salinity. After several years, they go back to freshwater to reproduce. Pacific lampreys can use chemical clues released by their larval migrating pals to find their way. They can travel hundreds of miles inland to find the perfect spot for spawning and rearing. It's not always the same place they spawned in. Many species of birds, mammals, and other fish can appreciate the fatty flesh of lamprey. This makes them some of the most valuable players in freshwater and marine ecosystems. Another lamprey type, the sea lamprey, is native to the Atlantic Ocean. It's not that dangerous when it's at home, but once it gets to the Great Lakes, it becomes a real threat to the 4 local native species of lamprey. The sea lamprey is up to 4 times bigger than the lake species. It has unlimited food and spawning grounds, and no natural predators here, so it becomes cocky. It secretes an enzyme that doesn't let the blood clot. Once it attaches to some unsuspecting fish, it spends the next several months feeding off of it. And even if the fish shakes the lamprey off, it doesn't have long to live because the mark the predator leaves behind. Sea lampreys aren't interested in humans, but can accidentally latch onto a swimmer. It won't be fatal, but it's not the most pleasant sensation, and you need to get the spot of the impact disinfected. The Australian box jellyfish looks harmless, but it's considered the most venomous marine animal. Unlike other kinds of jellyfish that float with the current rather than swim, this creature can reach an impressive speed and choose its own direction. It has tentacles covered with tiny darts loaded with poison. People and animals that get unlucky enough to meet with those tentacles face some scary and sometimes even fatal consequences in a matter of minutes. Before you decide to never revisit the ocean, you should know that only a few out of around 50 existing species of box jellyfish have venom that is lethal to humans. There are some not-so-dangerous species living in warm coastal waters worldwide. And the most dangerous ones are in the Indo-Pacific region and northern Australia. A blue-ringed octopus spots a signature psychedelic color and the ability to take away your life. This cute-looking sea monster likes to spend its time in the soft, sandy bottom or shallow tide pools and coral reefs. It normally hides in underwater crevices, among shells or debris. If you disturb it, the octopus will activate its tiny color-changing organs and demonstrate its blue rings as a warning signal. The next step will be releasing a venom 1,000 times more powerful than cyanide. This venom is more toxic than that of land mammals. The octopus normally uses it to hunt crabs, shrimp, and small fish by pecking them with its beak and paralyzing them. There is no known antidote for the venom, so if you ever see this sea creature, the best you can do is to stay away from it. It bites without any pain, so you might notice when it's too late. The good news is that it's not aggressive and won't go after you unless it's cornered. The reef stonefish are masters of disguise in the underwater world that camouflage themselves on rocks, coral reefs, or just blend into the seabed. They thrive throughout tropical marine waters of the Indo-Pacific. Their invisibility superpower makes them especially dangerous to their prospective victims they ambush and swallow whole. If someone happens to disturb them, their 13 defensive dorsal spines stand on end and deliver a powerful venom punch. They say stonefish stings are extra painful and lead to scary consequences within minutes. They're called the most venomous fish in the world. If you don't do anything about it, the impact can be lethal. If you ever go diving in the Pacific Ocean, be careful not to pick up a cone snail from the seafloor. It has a beautiful shell made of brown, black, or white patterns. Like most other snails, it's slow, but it has a complicated system of seeking out prey. It likes to snack on fish, marine worms, or even other snails. Once a cone snail senses food is near, it activates a sharp proboscis, or a needle-like protrusion from its mouth. The attack is swift and super potent. The victim doesn't even have time to realize what happened to them. Once it's completely incapable of moving, the cone snail swallows it whole. Humans aren't on its menu, but it can still release the venom if someone steps on it or disturbs it. The proboscis can even penetrate gloves. Luckily, only several out of over 700 species of cone snails can take a human's life. But since there's no antivenom, you better not risk it. All 52 known species of sea snakes living mostly in the warm tropical waters of the Indian and Pacific Oceans are venomous. The beaked sea snake even has the title of one of the world's most venomous serpents, but it's one of the few kinds that can pose a real threat to humans. Sea snakes prefer a peaceful coexistence and would rather slither away than engage in any confrontations. If you ever see them in the water, staying calm and moving slowly will save your life. Sea snake bites, although almost painless at the moment, can have varying degrees of impact. Some may only cause mild symptoms, while others can lead to severe outcomes. Most bite reports come from accidental encounters, like someone freeing them from nets or unsuspecting beachgoers stepping on them. Blue dragons rarely grow larger than the size of a grape. They like to swim belly up, so their brightest blues blend in with the ocean waters. And the silver front faces down and camouflages with the darker seabed. Blue dragons feed on another dangerous sea creature and store up their stinging cells. Their venom lives on even after the fish itself is no longer alive. That's why you should be extra careful and never pick up or step on them on the beach.
Hold your breath, we're going to the seabed. What do we have here? A lot of fish, octopuses, coral reefs, perfect circles of unknown origin, shrimps, stingrays, sharks. Wait, what? Hold on. What are those perfect circles on the seabed? Wow! Perfectly symmetrical, 67 feet in diameter with a clear outline. 1, 2, 3, 10, 20. There are so many of them. 1,300 strange rings at the bottom of the Mediterranean Sea. What are they doing there? How did they appear? Try to guess. Traces of an extraterrestrial civilization? The remains of an ancient city? A new kind of sea creature? There's a 99% chance you won't be able to give the correct answer. But here's a little hint. There's a connection between these circles and the Ice Age. It seems that the mystery has become even more complicated, but let's find the answer together. So it all started in 2011. Marine biologists discovered mysterious circles at the bottom of the Mediterranean Sea, and the first question that arose was why no one had noticed them before, given the vast territory these circles occupied. The fact is that a big part of the bottom of the Mediterranean Sea is too shallow and close to the shore. And for this reason, no one is engaged in mining there. At the same time, the bottom is too deep for scuba divers. Thus, the circles were in some kind of blind spot. Let's move on. The circles are approximately the same size with a clear outline and perfect symmetry. But the strangest thing is that there's a dark spot in the center of each of them. Visually, it looks like a fried egg with a yolk in the middle. In 2013, biologists discussed the discovery at a scientific conference and made assumptions about the nature of these circles. Perhaps they were connected to underwater volcanoes that left such strange marks after the eruption. Perhaps it was a strange geological formation. But why are they so perfectly round? It doesn't look like they appeared by accident. Okay, let's move on. Is it possible that it's coralline algae growing in weird shapes? You can guess as much as you'd like, but scientists needed to go down to the bottom and study the rings up close. So they did. In the center of the ring was a large protrusion formed by red calcareous algae. This ledge was several feet high and wide, and there were swaying fan-shaped growths at its top. The strange ledge was surrounded by some kind of pale scree that looked like debris. The black ring itself consisted of rhodoliths, accumulations of hard, rocky algae. Scientists realized that those weren't just circles. They seemed to be alive. Okay, more questions appeared. Let's say it's some kind of strange algae. But why form these circles? What made them this way? Scientists took samples of the material from the center of the circles and found out that they were about 21,000 years old. At that time, large-scale events were taking place. They changed the appearance of Earth and the fate of all creatures living on it. 21,000 years ago was the peak of the last ice age. The Mediterranean Sea was much smaller and colder than it is now, and the seabed on which the mysterious rings appeared was closer to the surface. Now it's dark here, but at that time, this place was illuminated by sunlight passing through the water. Scientists also discovered several caves with layers of sedimentary rocks near the circles. In the past, these caves were located above the coastline and were washed by waves, resulting in erosion and the appearance of these empty gaps. Now they're completely underwater. Okay, what does this give us? The cold sea was not too deep during the Ice Age. What's next? Next, the scientists found out the nature of these strange ledges in the middle of the rings. At first glance, they looked very similar to corals, but in fact, they were sediments formed by coralline algae. These photosynthetic organisms created a skeleton of calcium carbonate, and the reason they did it there is that it was a warm place with access to sunlight. In the beginning, these algae were thriving. They expanded outward and formed something similar to domes or large pancakes. Then the Ice Age began to end. The weather became warmer, the water gradually heated up, and giant continental glaciers began to melt. A huge amount of melted ice flowed into the Mediterranean Sea. Its level rose, the bottom became deeper, and there was less and less light. The beautiful algae slowly plunged into darkness. Their domes collapsed and left behind those little ledges in the center and pieces of calcium carbonate scattered around. For thousands of years, there was nothing around those algae remains. But where did the big circles come from? After the melting of glaciers, the Mediterranean sea level stabilized about 8,000 years ago. The algae grew new layers in the form of small ledges, those swaying fan-shaped growths. This organism began to develop the pieces of calcium carbonate, and then small pieces began to roll down the ledges. They rolled in different directions, forming those perfect circles. At the moment, this version is the most realistic. Scientists say they have no direct evidence that the mysterious circles appear this way, but they also have no reason to believe that this version is incorrect. If any of you were hoping that someone or something had deliberately drawn these circles, don't get upset. There are other mysterious circles on the seabed, and this time they were created for an important purpose by one amazing creature. In 1995, divers noticed beautiful circles with a geometric pattern right on the sandy bottom of the shores of Japan. It looked like someone had drawn them on the sand. The circles weren't ancient because otherwise the water would have swept the patterns away. Indeed, soon those drawings were erased, but then new ones appeared. Nobody knew what was going on. Was someone drawing stuff to tease divers? But it turned out to be much cooler. The patterns were supposed to attract females, and this someone who drew them was a small, white-spotted pufferfish. The males of these fish flap their fins on the seabed, swim in different directions, and thus draw amazing patterned circles. They have no art education, and they probably can't think abstractly, but they really want to start a family. These fish are about 5 inches long, but their artworks are about 7 feet in diameter. These little artists try their best, but what happens afterward? The female swims in, looks at the pattern, and gives her score. If she likes the pattern, she's ready to start a family. If she doesn't like the drawing, she dashes away and leaves the poor pufferfish with a broken heart. Nothing much is known about the drawings. Scientists can't get into the fish's brain and find the answers. All we can do is observe. And during long observations, scientists noticed some curious things. Around the center, there are perfectly aligned gaps and patterns. The fish not only draws outlines on the seabed, but also decorates them with fragments of shells. That is, the male tries very hard, like an artist working on their painting. The fish creates this masterpiece within 7 to 9 days. After that, undercurrents wash it away, and the fish has to rebuild it if the female doesn't like this work. But if the female chooses the male, they become a couple. The female lays eggs in the center of these circles. Then she swims away, and the male stays with the eggs for 6 days to protect and care for their offspring. The behavior of these fish is similar to that of bowerbirds, birds that build small huts out of twigs and leave and decorate them with colorful berries and flowers. And all this in order to attract a mate to create offspring. In 2021, while drilling about 11 feet beneath the surface of permafrost in northeastern Siberia, researchers uncovered a 24,000-year-old frozen life form. And then, they brought it to life. Before cloning it, or better said, it cloned itself. This might sound like the beginning of a sinister horror story, But don't worry, it's actually quite the opposite. What scientists unearthed was a microscopic frozen organism that could fundamentally reshape what we think about evolution and survival. The uncovered tiny creatures are called bdelloid rotifers, microscopic animals with little wheel-like mouths that they use both for moving and feeding. They were first discovered in 1696 and are fairly common in freshwater environments around the world, with a few saltwater species. They might seem unremarkable, but scientists have been studying them since early microscopes made it possible to actually see them. Because even though there are only a few dozen microns wide, they're surprisingly complex, with brains, guts, muscles, and reproductive systems. Could it be that within that complexity lies the secret to ultimate resilience, maybe even for us humans? Let's break it down. These creatures are extremophiles. That means they can survive being completely drained of water at any point in their life cycle, then lie dormant until rehydrated. But that's not all. They can also persevere through some of the harshest conditions on Earth, or in outer space, or even being stuck in the Siberian permafrost wasteland for tens of thousands of years. This is possible because they can enter cryptobiosis, a condition where organisms pause their metabolism and become nearly inactive. It may sound sciencey, but actually, some of the everyday products we eat are stored in a fridge thanks to this phenomenon. Take yeast, for example. Live yeast cells are surrounded by a protective layer made of dead cells and some nutrients. You can keep yeast at room temperature, but if cryptobiosis comes into play, in the form of your fridge or freezer, it stores much better and longer. During cryptobiosis, rotifers accumulate protective compounds like chaperone proteins, which help them repair and recover once favorable conditions return. Chaperone proteins are like tiny bodyguards. Their job is to keep other proteins in the cell from falling apart under pressure. When the body is stressed, whether from heat, cold, toxins, dehydration, or just the natural aging process, the proteins inside our cells can start to misfold. Proteins need to be folded into very specific shapes to function properly, and when that structure breaks down, they become useless, or worse, harmful. Misfolded proteins can pile up and interfere with normal cell function. In some cases, they clump together in ways that poison the cell. This kind of damage is even linked to serious health conditions. So, if rotifers have developed powerful proteins that prevent cellular chaos even under extreme conditions, could we use them to protect human cells from diseases and aging? By analyzing the age of the ice they were found in, scientists figured out that these frozen rotifers were at least 24,000 years old. That's a huge leap from earlier studies, which showed they could survive frozen for only about 10 years. Now that's what you call record-breaking. This period of Earth's history is known as the Late Pleistocene Epoch, a time dominated by the Ice Age, which means these invertebrates were lying dormant when Manny and Sid were having their adventure while roaming the icy landscapes, along with saber-toothed cats and giant ground sloths. Fun fact: although animated movies like Ice Age show woolly mammoths as huge, towering giants, they were actually about the same size and weight as today's average African elephant. Nature and evolution can be so cruel, yet fascinatingly unpredictable. Massive, menacing beasts that came from the Ice Age couldn't survive it, yet something tiny and weird, like a bdelloid, could. But regarding our unfrozen creature, after the soil thawed, the organism didn't just begin moving again, it also started reproducing. This is thanks to an ability called parthenogenesis, a specific form of reproduction in which embryos develop from unfertilized eggs, allowing them to reproduce independently. It really is like cloning, but it happens naturally. Many organisms, such as certain insects, reptiles, and even some birds, are capable of parthenogenesis, at least under specific conditions. For example, in honeybees, males develop from unfertilized eggs through parthenogenesis, making them genetic copies of their mother. However, Parthenogenesis is often seen as an evolutionary disadvantage because it limits genetic diversity, meaning that most species that reproduce this way eventually face extinction. Despite this, bdelloid rotifers have diversified into over 450 distinct species over millions of years, which is extremely rare. Scientists believe their survival comes down to a few evolutionary adaptations. They can pause their metabolism through cryptobiosis, repair their DNA with specialized proteins, and even borrow useful genes from other organisms using a process called horizontal gene transfer. Unlike most animals which rely solely on inherited DNA, these organisms can steal genetic material from bacteria, fungi, and even plants, splicing foreign genes into their genome to gain new survival traits. Some studies have shown that up to 10% of their active genome comes from foreign DNA. This could explain their extraordinary resilience. They borrow genes for stress resistance, toxin breakdown, or radiation repair, essentially patching and upgrading their DNA in real time. It's not like the mind flare from Stranger Things where the creature absorbs another organism to improve itself and grow. It's more like a spy stealing a blueprint from a rival lab to learn its secrets. When cells rupture, for example, when bacteria die nearby, bdelloids scoop up loose DNA fragments and integrate them into their own genome. Interestingly, the usual expected lifespan of bdelloid rotifers under normal circumstances is only 2 weeks. The soil sample that contained these rotifers also held nematodes or roundworms, another group of tiny survivors already known to withstand tens of thousands of years icebound. This isn't just limited to microscopic animals. Researchers have successfully regrown Antarctic moss and entire Campion plants from seeds and samples frozen for hundreds or even thousands of years. In 2016, a team of Japanese scientists brought tardigrades, or simply water bears, back to life after 30 years in cryptobiosis. Tardigrades are even more impressive because they can live in a suspended state for up to 30 years, without food or water, and with temperature swings from deep freeze to 300 degrees Fahrenheit. These guys can also endure crushing deep-sea pressures, vacuum, microgravity, and intense radiation of space. Remember when we said earlier that these species can survive the harshest conditions on Earth and beyond? It wasn't an exaggeration, and now you understand why. And it's exactly why NASA and its partners sent water bears and bdelloid rotifers into orbit. They've even been aboard the ISS, helping scientists understand how these animals handle microgravity, radiation, and stress. Not only that, but in 2007, the European Space Agency launched a bunch of tardigrades into low Earth orbit, completely exposed. No suit, no shield, floating in a vacuum. They were blasted by cosmic radiation, UV light 1,000 times stronger than what hits Earth's surface, and temperatures near absolute zero. And when they came back, most of them woke up and reproduced despite the harsh conditions they were exposed to. This ties into an old theory called panspermia, the idea that life didn't originate on Earth but arrived here, locked in space dust or trapped inside a meteorite. Before, maybe it sounded like a fringe science, but when organisms can brush off cosmic radiation, then it doesn't seem so far-fetched, does it? What about humans? Does this mean we now fully understand the way hibernation works and are close to putting humans in this state? Sorry for spoiling it for you, but it still feels more like science fiction. However, researching rotifers, water bears, and similar organisms can lead to massive breakthroughs in other fields. Their resilience might be a blueprint for medicine, for reshaping what it means to age, maybe even to pause life itself, or extend it. We're talking real, practical innovations, from better preservation of human organs for transplantation to drugs that slow aging at the cellular level. And yes, maybe even cryogenic hibernation, long enough to make interstellar travel possible.